some news. While enriching himself and associates at the expense of people on the planet, the president took some time to talk about himself and complain about the news and how everyone is lying about him. And then he lied about that and other stuff in the process. And some of it's small, some of it's calculated and malicious, and some of it's because he just doesn't know. And it'll be like a mixture of a couple things he heard, then exaggerated, and filtered through his need to make it about himself. And in addition to all of the things I just said illustrating poor qualities of leadership, they also acted as a distraction for a lot of the things he doesn't want people to notice that are enriching himself and associates at the expense of people on the planet. And that's the news. We did it. Still here? All right, fine. So here's some more specific news. The president voluntarily lied about calling almost every fallen soldier's family, causing the White House to scramble for the information that would be required for when the president starts making all of those phone calls. Then it was reported that he had an insensitive phone call with the widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, in which the president seemed to not know the soldier's name and also allegedly told the wife he knew what he signed up for, but when it happens, it hurts anyway. Showing... This is empathy, but no, it should say showing that he's bad at this, and also showing he has a deeply disturbing view of what soldiers sign up for. As the commander-in-chief, thinks soldiers sign up to die. Not great, especially considering he keeps teasing war like it's a fun game for us all to play, and he thinks we should invade countries and take their oil.
We should have said, we'll help you, but we want 50% of your oil.
Anyway, the president was accused of not knowing the soldier's name and thus took to Twitter to tell the people directly that he knows the soldier's name by tweeting, "Democrat Congresswoman totally fabricated what I said to the wife of a soldier who died in action, and I have proof. Sad." And I have been convinced that he knows the name of the soldier and the wife and the congresswoman because of proof. Sad. This story continued until he finally snapped and told everyone,
No hesitation, one of the great memories of all time. One of the great memories of all time.
Or a gamote. He's the proud owner of a gamote, despite saying, "I don't remember," 35 times during his deposition for the case against Trump University, a fraud university, and despite declaring October 24th United Nations Day, even though it's been United Nations Day since 1948, and despite saying under oath he wouldn't recognize Felix Sater if he were in the room with him right now, despite Felix Sater being a Russian-linked mafia figure who worked with the president on several real estate projects, has been photographed near him several times, literally lived in Trump Tower, and was the one who wrote an email to Trump's lawyer that read, "Our boy can become president of the USA, and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will manage this process." Or maybe not despite of all that, probably because of it. But anyway, in the interest of one of the great memories of all time, here's some news. When this week Sarah Huckabee Sanders said it's inappropriate to question a general, even when that general's retired and now the chief of staff of the White House that you speak for, a gamote haver might remember when Donald Trump did exactly that. And when John Kelly attacks Congresswoman Wilson for making a speech honoring Americans who died for the country about herself and money, even though it turned out that's not what happened, one can't help but agree with four-star general and current White House chief of staff for the Trump administration, John Kelly, that empty barrels make the most noise. Or, as daughter of local D.C. comic Mike Huckabee and current press secretary for the Trump administration, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, said, "If you're able to make a sacred act like honoring American heroes about yourself, you're an empty barrel." And then a gamote haver might point to President Trump on literally his first full day of office when he gave a speech to the CIA in front of a wall representing 117 CIA employees who died in the line of duty.
It looked like 1.5 million people, whatever it was, but it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. I think we have the all-time record in the history of Time magazine. Like if Tom Brady's on the cover, it's one time because he won the Super Bowl or something, right? I've been on for 15 times this year. I don't think that's a record, Mike, that can never be broken. Do you agree with that? Trust me. I'm like a smart person,
he said to the intelligence community in front of the wall, commemorating their fallen colleagues, 10 days after comparing them to Nazis in Nazi Germany. And I'm not even going to touch the Nazi thing. I could, but I won't. What sparked this tweet, the CIA is Nazis tweet, was the release of the now infamous Steele dossier, which alleges Trump's campaign colluded with the Russian government during the 2016 election via various channels and financial dealings. It also alleges activities which make the president's use of quotes around leak very interesting. But it's back in the news, so here's some news. The Steele dossier was funded in part by the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign as opposition research, which is a thing that all candidates do through private firms like the ones hired to produce the dossier. They don't traditionally email people connected to the Russian government and get emails back saying, I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this, but they do hire private firms to research opponents. And even though the president wants to make a big art of the deal out of this, the news that the DNC funded some of it isn't news because it was already widely known that the firm was hired by a Republican donor in the Republican primary, stopped paying when Trump got the nomination, Democrats started picking up the bill, Steele came on, Trump won, the Democrats stopped paying, and Steele kept investigating because he thought it was credible and important. So it's weird the president keeps bringing up the discredited dossier, which, first of all, more like piss-credited. And also of all, it's not been discredited. In fact, many aspects of the dossier have been confirmed by other outlets and by the intelligence community.
I'm a very intelligent person.
Uh-huh. Speaking of that, another big story Trump and Sean Hannity are yelling about now is the Uranium 1 deal, because Hillary Clinton was given millions by the Russian government for 20% of our uranium to use for bombs. Or this is an old news story in which a Russian company bought a 51% stake in a company merged from South Africa-based Uranium 1 and Canada-based Eurasia Energy, and the transfer of ownership needed to be approved by then-President Barack Hussein Obama, as advised by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, which was made up of Hillary Clinton and 8 other cabinet members, and of which the Secretary of Treasury is the chairperson. And the uranium is still in the United States, still here, and is not allowed to be exported because Uranium 1 doesn't have an NRC export license. And the majority of the alleged quid pro quo donations were made a year and a half before Clinton was Secretary of State and 3 years after the donor sold his stake in the company. Who knows though? There might be something there. But this story stemmed from opposition research by Steve Bannon. Some of it's been discredited. Not like Trump's lawyer discredited the dossier by proving he'd never been to Prague by tweeting a picture of the front of a passport. But there were errors. And the article that restarted this Uranium 1 talk was written by pro-Trump, weirdly pro-Michael Flynn John Solomon, who was the COO of Circa, a media company loved by Sean Hannity that pushed anonymous allegations against Trump's enemies and was bought in 2015 by the pro-Trump Sinclair Group, which currently covers about 40% of American households in drippy, Trumpy propaganda without you even knowing it or telling you. Just how he likes it. And this story was pushed by none other than Devin Nunes, who you might remember recused himself from Russia-related investigations because he helped the president lie about evidence of wiretapping of the president. Devin Nunes also happens to be the guy who helped break the story about the dossier being funded by the DNC. Busy guy, Devin. Almost like you and the president and his buddy in state media are doing a little, coordinated, propaganda to distract people.
I'm a very intelligent person.
Wow. Maybe. A little bit. Although, he recently said that after being asked if he should be more civil. His answer to, should you be more civil, was that he went to an Ivy League school and is very intelligent. But it's not a great answer to that question, especially if you have a gamote, because he transferred to that Ivy League school in his junior year as a favor from the admissions officer who is his brother's friend. And if you're an intelligent person, you don't say you're an intelligent person, especially after being asked why you're uncivil. The question was about why you're a bully, because you're a bully. Your wife is on an anti-bullying campaign along with Betsy DeVos, who, thanks to my gamote, I know has so far rolled back protections for transgender students and sexual assault survivors and students with disabilities. And I wonder if a gamote could think of a good single moment to represent bullying and the disabled and memory.
I don't remember.
Cool. I knew we could do it.
I'm a very intelligent person.
I know. And as a fellow gamote haver, I remember you donated your second quarter salary of $100,000 to the Department of Education, something you value. But as a gamote haver, you also cut the education budget by millions. But gamote-wise, I remember you said you donate your salary, which is nice. But damn, my gamote, that's literally what Hitler did. And gamote getting me hard, you also slept next to Hitler's speeches. And when asked about it, you asked, who told you about that? And then said, yeah, but not Hitler's speeches. My friend Marty gave me Mein Kampf. Kampf, but it's okay because he's Jewish. But your friend says, no, it wasn't Mein Kampf, it was My New Order, Hitler's speeches. And also, he's not Jewish. And then you brought it up again later to say that if you did have Hitler's speeches, you wouldn't read them. But as a gamote, I remember saying I wouldn't bring up Nazis. Dang. Here's some news. Republican Senator Jeff Flake gave a speech about how Trump sucks. So, welcome to the hashtag resist, hashtag ents, and the hashtag 21st century. And even though Flake basically said, because I am no longer seeking re-election, I may now speak my mind, the things that I said are good are bad. You're welcome for my bravery. And even though now that he's leaving, his seat is open, and Bannon can get a far-right nationalist candidate in there instead, and gamotes might notice he has more than a 90% voting alignment with Trump, and less than 12 hours after his brave speech, his gamote shit itself, and he voted to strip away consumers' rights to sue banks. Now, good thing banks don't do crimes that cause problems and then don't answer for it already. Good thing lies. He's so obviously a liar and not a very intelligent person and doesn't know what he's doing and is unhinged and doesn't have the people's best interest at heart and he's just a liar. Long history of it. Lies all the time. Little stuff like lying about his approval rating, which has been lower than 40% for 21 straight weeks, or big stuff like, I will uphold the Constitution. His lying is so obvious, and if you still support him, sorry, you're fascist or you're in a cult. Maybe both, and it's alarming. But the one thing cults and fascist regimes need to succeed above all else is a charismatic leader. So, even though you, Jeff Flake, fist shake, the more and more people who acknowledge what a danger he specifically is, the sooner we can get rid of him and he can stop distracting us with his bullshit. And with Trump gone, there will be an opening for a new charismatic leader. And I'm not worried about that. Sorry, that was pretty bleak. Fascism, cults. So to close, speaking of the interior and parks, to which the president donated his first quarter salary and also from which cut millions of its budget, here's some fun news. You know how when you think of rich people in New York who've been staples of the city for decades and allegedly donate millions to charity all the time and are good people, and how over all those years there'd be something named after them, a park bench, a street, something that's not a hotel built by them, or steaks made by them, or a fake university made by them. But there's not. Except wait, thank you, gamote. There literally is a Donald J. Trump state park in New York. He bought the land for $2 million and tried to build a golf resort on it and couldn't get the permits, so he donated it and wrote it off for $100 million. And they tried to turn it into a dog park, but the buildings have asbestos in them. Now it just sits around looking like this. Look at it. Look at it. Look at the metaphor for his brain and soul. Greatest memory of all time. Only I can fix it. I'm the one. Look at me and I'm the greatest park in the world. That's his park. He's the president. His park looks like that. We're done. Roll it. This is his park. Hey everybody, thanks for watching that video. If you want to subscribe to our channel, click the C in the middle of your screen. If you want to get notifications when we have new videos, click the bell icon. If you want to click like, that'd be great. If you want to comment, be nice.